From day one, my administration has made it a top priority to ensure that America is among the very cleanest air and cleanest water on the planet.
That was President Trump's address on climate change this week. Critics, of course, say the president has done the complete opposite of helping the planet and actually harmed the Earth with his rollback of environmental regulations. Climate change, of course, also on the minds of Democrats, with Bernie Sanders teaming up with AOC to push Congress for a national emergency declaration on climate change, declaring it an existential crisis.
And of course, like everything else, their proposal has 2020 implications. 14-year-old climate justice activist Alexandria Villasenor stated after the Democratic debates, climate change is part of every issue that they talked about, including healthcare, immigration, and the presidency of Donald Trump. Here to elaborate more is Alexandria herself. She is the lead organizer of Global Fridays for Future Climate Strikes. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
We're so glad to have you. Thank you for being here.
So tell us what you're doing in Washington, D.C.
What are you in town for?
Yes, so I'm here today with Mom's Clean Air Force, and we will be lobbying our senators for 100% renewable energy by 2050.
That's incredible. So you've been a leader in the youth strike movement, taking Fridays off of school to protest the lack of action on climate change. What made you personally so passionate about this subject?
Well, I'm actually originally from California. I moved to New York City this past August, but I was visiting family in California when the Paradise Fire broke out, and I have asthma, and that was a very unsafe situation for me because my hometown was only an hour away from Paradise. So my family had to send me back to New York City early from visiting family, and at that point I was really upset and mad and made the connection that climate change is linked to California's wildfire and is fueling them. And that's what started to get me to pay attention to COP24, and that's how I saw Greta Thunberg speak. And she had really empowered me to go out and strike on the last day of COP24, December 14th, which is when my first school strike started.
Tell people a little bit about who Greta is for people who don't know.
Greta Thunberg is a 16-year-old Swedish climate activist, and she had started to strike school on Fridays and strike at her local Swedish parliament demanding action from world leaders on the climate crisis. And she sparked this global movement where school children are now striking every Friday demanding climate action.
So what would satisfy you to stop striking? What do you want to see from our lawmakers?
I want to see the world leaders reduce global greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030 and stay in line with the IPCC report that came out last October.
What have you thought about how the Democrats in the primary have addressed the issue of climate change? Are you satisfied with their proposals thus far?
They haven't talked about the climate crisis enough, and their proposals aren't sufficient enough. And I think that Jay Inslee's Evergreen Economy Plan has set a high standard for plans from presidential candidates.
So what do people need to do to earn your endorsement, Alexandria?
They need to listen to the science and address it by how much of an existential crisis this is. We need to keep fossil fuels in the ground and reduce our greenhouse gas emissions.
What are your classmates and teachers saying about what you're up to?
They are very supportive of my activism, and I'm a very persuasive person, I like to say.
I'm sure that's true.
So I've gotten my friends to join me on strikes, and I think I am changing the conversation on how my classmates think.
And what about how have lawmakers responded to you? You have some pretty high-profile meetings, I hear, on the Hill today. So are they listening, or are they just sort of giving you a pat on the head and turning you away?
Well, I'm going to make them listen. My generation will make sure that they take the climate crisis seriously.
So what did you think? There was a video a couple of months ago from Senator Dianne Feinstein, who seemed to be talking down to a couple of children from the Sunrise Movement. What is it like as a young person to see an older lawmaker talk down to children that way, who are so passionate about this issue?
Really, my generation is going to be impacted by the climate crisis the most, and so we are the ones having to make sure we're on the streets demanding action from world leaders, and we have to be out there demanding action, which is really upsetting that we're the ones and the pressure has been placed on us to make sure that we have a future, and it's not fair.
Have you and your friends been working on convincing your parents as well?
Well, my family and my parents are really supportive because they understand how much of an urgency this is, and they've made sure that I'm safe at my protests. They've been the perfect example of adult allies.
So what's next for you in the future? What else do you have going on that you want people to know about?
Well, there's a lot of climate work. The United Nations Climate Summit is coming up, and on September 20th, there's going to be a global mobilization of youth demanding action from world leaders at the United Nations Climate Summit.
Amazing. Alexandria, good luck today. Thank you for stopping by. We're really grateful for you being here, and I'm really grateful for the action you're taking too.
We appreciate you.
Coming up, presidential candidate Joe Biden unveils his foreign policy plans today. What exactly is he proposing?
And Kentucky Senate Democratic candidate Amy McGrath flip-flops on day one of her campaign. Team Rising weighs in when Rising continues.